She was just a mom until a racist cop turned her husband into a weapon of justice. She was just a mom, driving her son home from basketball practice. No sirens, no crime, no warning, until a racist cop slammed her to the ground and left her child bleeding on the pavement. But what he didn't know, her husband wasn't just some grieving father. He was a former U.S. Marshal trained to dismantle cartels, expose corruption, and hunt men who thought they were untouchable. That night they didn't just break a family, they unleashed a storm. This isn't just a story of brutality, it's a reckoning. And this time, justice doesn't wear a robe. It wears a badge and a memory. She was just a mother driving her son home until a racist cop slammed her to the ground and knocked her boy unconscious. But what they didn't know, her husband was a former U.S. Marshal. And he doesn't knock, he storms. Stay with us, because this time justice doesn't whisper, it roars. Dear viewer, what you are about to witness is not just a story. It is a powerful testament to the quiet power and pursuit of justice in places most people ignore. If this is your first time here, I warmly invite you to share where you are watching in the comments below. And if stories like this move you, challenge you, or make you think, consider subscribing and clicking the bell icon. We share voices that deserve to be heard every day. Thank you for being here. Now let's get into the story. It started with a shortcut, a simple decision made in the comfort of routine. Camille Porter had driven that same stretch of Magnolia Highway in Charleston, South Carolina, 100 times before. It was the route she trusted to get her and her son Jamal home from basketball practice before the sky went fully dark. She liked that road. It was wide, quiet, and ran alongside the wetlands, trees arching over in a protective canopy. But on this night, as a warm breeze moved through the pine trees and the distant hum of cicadas filled the air, the road turned from familiar to dangerous in the blink of an eye. Camille was laughing at something Jamal had said. His duffel bag spilling open in the back seat, the smell of sweat and Gatorade lingering in the air. That moment, brief, ordinary, was the last time anything felt normal. Flashing red and blue lights erupted behind her. A single cruiser, no siren, just those lights pulsating like a warning. Camille instinctively slowed and pulled to the side. Her pulse quickened, but she pushed the fear down. It's probably nothing, she told herself, hands firmly. At 10 and 2, she was used to these things. Too used to them. The door slammed before the patrol car fully stopped. Heavy boots hit the asphalt. She caught his face in the side mirror, white, late 40s, thick jaw, purpose in his stride. A second officer emerged, younger, quieter. He looked at Jamal, then at Camille. He hesitated, but only for a second. The spell of silence held. "I want my phone," Camille shouted. "Let me call my husband." "No phones," the first cop snapped. "You don't get to call anybody." But Jamal had already moved. Quick, scared, he grabbed Camille's phone from the console. The younger officer yelled at him to drop it. Camille screamed, "He's a kid! Don't you dare touch him!" The first cop lunged for Jamal, rough, forceful. It happened so fast that Camille's heart nearly stopped. Her son's body slammed to the ground. His head bounced off the pavement with a sickening thud. She screamed loud, raw animal. Her son didn't move. That was when something inside Camille broke. The second officer stepped back. He looked down at the boy, at the way his arms were twisted, at the blood now pooling under his head. He looked at his partner, and for the first time, fear appeared in his eyes. "Maybe we should call it in," he said. The first cop turned on him. "You shut your mouth." The silence that followed felt endless, broken only by the low hum of Camille's smartwatch vibrating on her wrist. One press emergency override. Her husband's face blinked onto the screen for half a second before the cop yanked it off and threw it to the ground. Too late. Across town, in a quiet, modest house tucked in a Charleston neighborhood, U.S. Marshal Wesley Porter was doing dishes when the emergency ping landed on his phone. His wife's location and alert, then silence. He dried his hands slowly, methodically, not with panic, with precision. Years of training snapped into place like a puzzle being completed. He reached for his badge, then his weapon. The Porter family had been invisible for too long. Quiet, respectable, hardworking. But that night on Magnolia Highway, someone picked the wrong family to brutalize the wrong woman, to dehumanize the wrong child to hurt, and the nation would soon find out exactly what happens when a black mother is beaten in front of her son, and her husband is a man trained to hunt down injustice for a living. This wasn't a mistake. It was a message. But Wesley Porter had a message of his own, and he was on his way. Wesley Porter didn't drive like a man chasing vengeance. He drove like a man who had done this before. Eyes darting between lanes, ears tuned to every shift in engine pitch, body held in controlled readiness as the marshland blurred past his windshield. He wasn't just a husband on a mission. He was a trained operative stepping back into a world he thought he'd left behind. The address ping from Camille's emergency beacon had gone dark 10 minutes after the initial signal, but that was enough. He had coordinates, a timestamp, and a reason no man should ever have to find. He didn't need sirens. He didn't need a uniform. What Wesley needed was clarity, and he had it. Wesley Porter didn't drive like a man chasing vengeance. He drove like a man who had done this before. His eyes darted between lanes, ears tuned to every shift in engine pitch, his body held in a controlled readiness as the marshland blurred past his windshield. He wasn't just a husband on a mission. He was a trained operative stepping back into a world he thought he'd left behind. The emergency beacon from Camille's smartwatch had gone dark 10 minutes after the initial signal. But that was enough. He had coordinates. He had a timestamp. And he had a reason no man should ever be given. Back on that lonely stretch of Magnolia Highway, the scene had descended into chaos. Sergeant Clay Delmont paced in a wide arc, trying to control the narrative as he radioed in a distorted version of events. His voice cracked under the weight of his own lies, claiming Camille had resisted arrest, that Jamal had become aggressive, that force was regrettably necessary. But each time he looked down at the boy motionless on the pavement, his voice wavered. Guilt might have been foreign to him, but fear wasn't. Deputy Brent Holloway stood off to the side, pale and shaking. His hand hovered near his holster, but he made no move to draw it. What he had witnessed and what he had allowed was now playing on repeat in his mind. Camille's still cuffed blood smeared across her cheekbone had gone silent. Not out of weakness, out of knowing. The look she gave them wasn't pleading. It wasn't even rage. It was colder than that. It was a promise that her husband would remember everything. When Wesley arrived, he didn't make a sound. He parked down the road, headlights off, and moved through the trees like a shadow. His training had taught him how to disappear in plain sight. He observed the scene, 2 officers, 1 cruiser, no backup. Jamal unmoving. Camille bleeding but alive. Every detail clicked into place with surgical clarity. He counted his breaths. 1, 2, 3. Then he stepped into the light. The gravel crunched beneath his boots. Delmont turned first, instinctively reaching for his belt. "Sir, this is a restricted." Wesley held up his badge. The U.S. Marshal emblem gleamed in the cruiser's headlights. "Step away from my wife." Delmont's mouth opened, then closed. He fumbled. You can't interfere with an active investigation." "I just did." Wesley's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It was the voice of a man who had walked into war zones, taken down cartels, dismantled syndicates, and now stood face to face with a small-town bully who wore a badge. He walked past Holloway, who didn't stop him, didn't even blink. Wesley knelt beside Jamal, pressed 2 fingers gently to his neck, then exhaled. There was a pulse. Weak, but there. He looked up at Camille. Her eyes locked onto his. She didn't say a word, but her body sagged just a little in relief. She was no longer alone. Wesley stood slowly, turned toward Delmont. "You put hands on my wife. You knocked my son unconscious. You violated civil rights, used excessive force, and fabricated probable cause." He took one step closer. "Do you know what happens when you do that to the wrong family?" Delmont stammered. We had reason. She was non-compliant. No Wesley cut him off. You had power, and you abused it. But your badge doesn't protect you from the truth." He pulled out a small recorder from his pocket. "This has been rolling since I arrived." And under her seat, he pointed toward Camille's car. "Dash cam, always on, always recording." Delmont turned pale. You can't save it for the court," Wesley snapped. Then, unexpectedly, Holloway spoke. "He told me to lie," he said quietly, gesturing to Delmont. "Said we'd say she got aggressive, that the kid lunged at us." Wesley turned to him, measured. "You going to testify to that? I think I need a lawyer." Camille, her voice hoarse but steady, finally spoke. "No," she said. "What you need is a conscience." Minutes later, paramedics arrived. Wesley had called them en route using a secure federal frequency that bypassed local dispatch. Jamal was loaded into the ambulance, stabilized, still unconscious, but breathing. Camille rode with him. Her hand clutched his, refusing to let go. Before the doors closed, she looked at Wesley one last time. "Make sure they don't bury this." "I will," he said, quiet, absolute. By dawn, the story had already started to leak. Wesley had sent the footage to an old contact in D.C., someone he trusted, someone who still owed him a favor. Within 12 hours, the video of Camille's unlawful detainment and Jamal's brutal assault would go viral. But more importantly, the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division would have it. Because what Delmont didn't know was this Wesley Porter wasn't just any former marshal. He had once been part of a special task force trained to dismantle corruption, to bring down powerful men who thought they were untouchable. And now that training would be used for his family. In Charleston, word spreads fast, but justice, real justice, moves slow. Wesley Porter didn't care. He wasn't chasing a headline. He was chasing accountability, and he wouldn't stop until everyone involved was exposed. Because they hadn't just hurt Camille. They had tried to silence her. They hadn't just struck Jamal. They'd struck the future. And when you break the wrong family, you don't just create a victim, you create a movement. Wesley had always known that justice in America didn't always favor the righteous. He had seen it in war zones, in border towns, in backroom court deals, where truth was traded like currency. But what had happened to Camille and Jamal was more than injustice. It was premeditated erasure. And he knew if he didn't fight smart, they'd bury everything before sunrise. The hospital was quiet except for the steady beeping of machines monitoring Jamal's vitals. Camille hadn't left his side. Her fingers remained gently curled around her son's hand, her eyes fixed on his bruised face. The nurses moved softly, whispering to one another, already aware of who the family was and what had happened. But the two men stationed at the door, they weren't from the hospital. They were federal protection. Wesley made sure of that. And while his wife and son fought a quieter battle inside, Wesley moved like a man sharpening a blade. Back at their home, he lifted a panel beneath the floorboards, something even Camille didn't know about. Inside a fireproof safe, a secure laptop encrypted hard drives and backup files from his years in the field. He wasn't just hunting truth now, he was preparing to weaponize it. He started where most people wouldn't dare look internal records. Through a private back door still active from his days as a federal investigator, Wesley accessed the personnel files of the county sheriff's office. What he found made his jaw clench. Sergeant Clay Delmont had been named in 4 previous excessive force complaints, all quietly settled with non-disclosure agreements. No charges, no suspensions, just silence. Deputy Brent Holloway had been with the department for only 18 months, but had already been transferred between 3 supervisors, each with internal misconduct citations of their own. But that wasn't the worst of it. Buried deep in the county's shared server, Wesley uncovered a memo. A single chilling phrase leapt off the screen: Operation Silent Guard. According to the sanitized language, Silent Guard was a community enforcement auxiliary initiative, a volunteer-based patrol effort to support understaffed officers in high crime zones. But Wesley had seen this before, in other cities, other departments. It was a backdoor paramilitary surveillance unit, one that allowed rogue officers to target neighborhoods of color with zero oversight. Delmont. He wasn't just a participant. He was listed as the coordinator. Wesley's pulse didn't rise. He didn't scream. He kept reading. Attached to the initiative were color-coded patrol maps, red zones marked for high alert engagement, nearly every red zone black low-income neighborhoods. A separate log flagged Camille's name, her offense. A community zoning complaint she'd filed just 3 days before the stop. That traffic stop wasn't random. It was retaliation. The broken taillight cited during the incident, a fabrication. Wesley cross-referenced with the State Patrol database. There were no open incidents involving Camille's vehicle that night. No witness reports, no surveillance logs. They didn't stop her for safety. They stopped her to send a message. Wesley copied every file, backed up everything 3 times. Then he sent it all to his former DOJ contact, Special Agent Mendes, an honest man who had once sworn to Wesley, "If anything ever happens to your family, I'll answer that call first." That night, Wesley picked up the encrypted phone. He didn't hesitate. "It's time," he said. "You've got something for me?" Mendes asked, voice tight. "I've got everything," Wesley replied. "Personnel records, tactical logs, chain of command memos. This isn't just about Delmont, it's systemic." Camille wasn't pulled over. She was profiled, flagged, tracked, and targeted. There was a pause on the line. Then Mendes simply said, "I'm on it. Be ready." Back at the hospital, Camille finally stepped into the hallway for the first time in hours. Her face was pale, her jaw clenched. "He hasn't woken up yet," she whispered. Her voice didn't crack, but Wesley could feel the pain behind each syllable. "He will," Wesley said, stepping closer. "And when he does, I want him to know we never let this go. Not for a second." Camille nodded, but there was more behind her eyes now. Not just exhaustion, not just grief. Fear. "They're already spinning it," she murmured. "Local news just aired a segment claiming I was combative, that Jamal lunged at the officers. They're rewriting it before our son even wakes up." Wesley's eyes narrowed. He said nothing. Instead, he pulled open his laptop and turned the screen toward her. Security footage, taken from a gas station 2 blocks from where the stop occurred. It showed Camille's SUV driving calmly, and behind it, Delmont's cruiser. Lights off. No sirens. Following for over 3 minutes. Premeditated. Then Wesley clicked on an audio file. The body mic from Delmont. "Make sure she doesn't leave here," the sergeant had sneered, thinking she can mouth off again. Camille stared, her breath caught. When the clip ended, she blinked hard, then whispered, "You got it all." Wesley nodded. Every second. He looked her in the eyes. "But this isn't just about exposing them," he said. "It's about tearing down the system that let them exist in the first place." Just then, his phone buzzed. It was Mendes. "We've got more," he said. "A whistleblower inside the sheriff's office. Anonymous for now, but legit. They sent internal documents. There were discussions about targeting vocal black families ahead of the next election." Wesley's jaw tightened. She wasn't pulled over for any violation, Mendes added. She was flagged, listed, watched. "You were right, Wesley. It goes deep." Wesley didn't respond right away. He didn't need to. His silence was heavier than rage. "They're scared," Mendes added, "and they should be. But they're coming for you now. You ready?" Wesley didn't blink. "I've been ready." That night, Wesley prepared his counterattack. Not with fists, not with fury, but with irrefutable truth. He created a digital press kit. Every document, every timestamp, every internal memo and surveillance file, video, audio, dashcam footage, names, logs, maps. Then he uploaded them to 3 independent news agencies' outlets known for fearless investigative journalism. He copied the DOJ, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and one National Civil Rights Coalition. And finally, he created a 4th file, a public version, encrypted, set to auto-release if anything happened to him or his family. Camille watched him work from across the room, one hand still gripping Jamal's. Her eyes never left her son, but when Wesley turned to her and said, "It's time," she rose without hesitation. "I'm with you," she said. "Always." The next morning, while the city still slept, Wesley made one more call. To Joelle Ramsey, a journalist known for fearless reporting and a viral reach. She answered on the second ring. "Is this about Charleston?" she asked. Wesley didn't introduce himself. He just said, "I've got a story that's going to set your network on fire." By noon, Joelle had arrived at a small media office Wesley had secured inside the back of an old bookstore in downtown Savannah. She wasn't alone. She brought 2 producers, a cameraman, and a civil rights attorney from the Southern Justice League. Wesley didn't waste a second. He handed her the entire case file, the silent guard operation, the targeting logs, the fabricated traffic stop, Camille's community complaint being used as justification, and of course the footage, both body cam and dash cam. Joelle watched in silence, her jaw slowly tensing as each clip played. "They're going to come after you," she said quietly. "This doesn't just bury one department. It implicates the mayor's office, election funding, state contracts. This isn't local anymore. It's political fire." Wesley met her gaze, voice steady. "Then we don't wait for them to react. We strike first." That same afternoon, Joelle's network aired a 90-second teaser segment. It featured Camille's unlawful arrest, Jamal's limp body on the asphalt, and Delmont's own voice recorded saying, "Let her squirm. She thinks someone's coming to save her." The video was shared over 1 million times in under 6 hours. Across the country, people stopped scrolling, and they started listening, but Wesley wasn't done. That evening, he and Camille sat in front of a camera side by side, their hands intertwined. Her bruises had darkened, but her voice was clear. She told the story not as a victim, but as a mother who had survived and refused to be silenced. Then Wesley leaned forward. "If you're watching this," he said, "and you've ever been told to stay quiet, to stay small, to comply, and be grateful, this is for you. That silence you carry. It was their plan. But our voices." He paused, eyes unblinking. "Our voices were made for more. We're not asking for vengeance. We're demanding a reckoning." That night, the full expose dropped under the headline, "Systemic Silence, What They Tried to Hide in Chatham County." It was shared by senators, celebrities, and grassroots leaders across the country. In Charleston, the mayor's office went on lockdown. The sheriff's department canceled its press briefing, and a group of local activists began organizing a protest on the courthouse steps. But the warning shot had already come. At 3:12 a.m., federal officers moved the Porter family to a safe house. Their home had been broken into, drawers, ripped open, files scattered, but nothing critical had been left behind. Wesley had expected this. He didn't flinch. "They think this will scare us," he told Camille, his voice calm as ever. "They think we'll run." He turned to his encrypted laptop. "Let's make sure they understand what happens when the people they target fight back." By the next morning, Charleston wasn't quiet anymore. Flyers had been posted on storefronts. Messages had been shared in church group chats. Hashtags were trending. The courthouse square was no longer just pavement and statues. It was a battleground for truth. Wesley Porter had called in every ally he had left: activists, veterans, faith leaders, educators, community organizers. They had all said the same thing: "We're coming." A press conference was scheduled for noon. The city prepared for rain, but people showed up anyway. Hundreds. Mothers with strollers. Grandfathers with protest signs. Students still in uniform from morning classes. Pastors in full robes. Veterans with folded arms and folded flags. They came with rage. They came with hope. They came with stories of their own. Cameras lined the edges of the courthouse lawn. Tripods clicked into place. Journalists filed in. And in the center of it all stood a wooden podium, bare, unpainted, and waiting. At 12:01 p.m., Wesley stepped up to the microphone. Beside him, Camille Porter, her face still bruised but unshaken. Her hand rested gently on Jamal's shoulder. The boy sat in a wheelchair, bandaged, pale, but awake. Behind them stood Deputy Raylan Price, the internal whistleblower, holding a manila folder thick with evidence. Wesley didn't shout. He didn't rage. He simply spoke. They tried to hide it. They tried to erase our names, but we are still here, and we are not going anywhere. The crowd leaned in. What happened to Camille and Jamal wasn't just a traffic stop gone wrong. It was part of something much bigger, something calculated. A system designed to profile, punish, and silence families who speak up. He turned slightly, voice growing firmer. They thought we were alone. They thought we'd be quiet. They thought they could rewrite the story. So now let me tell it straight. He listed the names, the red zones, the silent guard memos, the hit list of families labeled as aggressors, the community board complaints used to justify surveillance, the threats, the lies, the cover-ups. Then Camille stepped forward. Her voice cracked not from fear, but from fury. They slammed my son to the pavement. They told me I couldn't call my husband. They looked me in the face and tried to make me small. She turned to Jamal, eyes wet. But my son is not small. He is light, and brilliance, and future. And I will never apologize for raising a boy who knows his worth. A cheer erupted from the crowd, loud, full-throated, righteous. Then Raylan Price took the podium. I was told to stay quiet. I was told to look the other way, or I'd be next. But I joined the sheriff's office to protect. And if I stay silent now, I'm no better than the men who did this. She held up the folder. These are the orders. These are the logs. These are the names. And I am done being afraid of the truth. The lawn erupted again. This time, reporters shouted over one another. Mics were raised. Phones were live streaming. Nationwide networks cut in. This wasn't just a press conference. This was a declaration. Wesley took the mic one last time. If you're watching this from your home, your classroom, your courtroom, know this. We're not here to burn down the system. We're here to rebuild it with sunlight and stone and truth. We didn't choose this war, but we're not walking away from it either. He placed his hand over his heart. Camille mirrored him. Jamal raised his head. And to the other families out there, the ones still waiting for someone to speak up, we see you. And now, the world sees us. That night, the full story aired on every major news network. The Department of Justice confirmed their investigation had expanded. State officials issued subpoenas. Multiple officers were placed on leave. Community patrol funding was frozen. But more importantly, the silence was broken. Sometimes the most powerful stories don't begin with a hero. They begin with a scream, a bruise, a silence that should have never existed in the first place. Camille didn't ask to be brave. Wesley didn't seek justice to be a symbol. And Jamal, he just wanted to get home after practice. But when power forgets its purpose, when the system punishes the innocent for daring to exist, then truth becomes a weapon and love becomes resistance. This family did more than survive. They stood up, they spoke out, and they pulled back the curtain on something far bigger than themselves. Because when the truth is dragged into the light, it doesn't just expose, it ignites. If this story moved you, angered you, or gave you hope, please don't let it end here. Tap like to show the world you're watching. Leave a comment below telling us, have you or someone you love ever been profiled, ignored, or silenced? Your voice matters here. Your story deserves to be heard. And if you believe that justice isn't something we wait for, but something we fight for, subscribe to Soulful Stories Full. Because here we don't just tell stories. We lift them, we honor them, and we fight to make sure they're never forgotten again. Until next time, stay aware, stay strong, and stay soulful.